Good day, everyone. For this video, we'll be discussing about limiting factors and tolerance. The existing natural ecosystem is often confronted with negative impacts of modern technology. So because of overpopulation and at the same time scarcity of resources, we tend to compete for these resources. At the same time, we tend to overpopulate and pollute our surroundings. Limiting factors are environmental influences that constrain the productivity of organisms, populations, or communities, and thereby prevent them from achieving their full biological potential or biological importance, which could be realized through optimal conditions. As we can see, there are different human activities that could continue to degrade our quality of abiotic and also biotic factors. For example, deforestation or illegal logging, and at the same time, using using nets with small holes that could potentially catch smaller fish and defeat our sustainable development. So these are just some of the limiting factors that could Im- impede the growth of a particular species. So these are the different terms that you need to take note. When talk about environmental factors, it must satisfy minimum and maximum criteria for life. The minimum criteria are usually represented by the least availability that will sustain organisms or ecological processes. And when we talk about maxima, these represent toxicity or other biological damages. So therefore, if there is too little or too much, there will be a problem in our ecosystem. So these are just some of the coral reef limiting factors: pollution, of course, disease, overfishing, sedimentation, bleaching caused by rising ocean temperatures due to global warming. There are two laws for organism response to environmental changes. The first law is the law of minimum. The growth and well-being of an organism is ultimately limited by that essential resource that is its lowest supply relative to what is required. So we'll talk about law of minimum. This is actually our limiting factor, the lowest supply relative to what is required. And this is the most efficient resource based on this particular law, the law of minimum. So we have the law of minimum. The mineral that is in lowest concentration and in lowest supply or amount will be the one that could limit the particular population or the particular environment from achieving its full potential. Next law would be the law of tolerance. Each physical factor in the environment, a minimum and maximum limit exists called the tolerance limit. From the word itself, tolerance, the threshold, beyond which the organism does not thrive or survive. So either too little or too much of any required factor like food, energy, heat, vitamins, minerals, water, or oxygen threatens the survival of organisms and even entire species. So each organism has their usual capability or capacity. Above it or below it will actually cause trouble for the survival of the particular organism. As you can see in this particular curve, the bell shape, which is a normal distribution. At the top of it, there is optimum growth for the particular organism or population. And beyond it or too much of it will actually cause problem. The principle of limiting factors is an ecological generalization that suggests at any given time in a particular ecosystem, productivity constrained by a single metabolically essential factor that is present in at least supply relative to the potential biological demand. So this is the limiting factor, the factor that causes the impediment or the problem in the growth of the particular organism is called as the limiting factor. This is the present in the least supply relative to the potential biological demand. So the environment could not sustain the growth of the particular organism, then therefore it is called as the limiting reagent or the limiting factor. Be it the amount of sunlight for this particular flower or the nutrient from the soil or the water that is being absorbed through its roots. So all of them could be a limiting factor. Every organism has a significant role to play in an ecosystem of the earth. Ecological niche is the role on how organism relates or fits in the ecosystem that it belongs to. So we talked about this one already, that everyone or every member of the ecosystem are vital and have their own role. So ecological niche. Morphology is the physical attributes of the organism that are important. Physiological and behavioral ways are also important. So in the food web, you can see here the interrelatedness of different food chains. So that means one is connected to one another. So every organism has their own role, as we talk here in the concept of ecological niche, and remove one organism and it will cause imbalance in our ecosystem. So all of the interconnected and overlapping food chains in the ecosystem make up what we call as your food web. So the habitat is actually the location or place in the environment where the organisms live. So niche and habitat are correlated in the study of biodiversity. People may be able to keep the homes of different organisms healthy and ultimately maintaining the number of organisms in the ecosystem. So as we all know, we have different types of organisms around the world, and the sum of this total ecosystem would be our biosphere. So it's really good to take note that we need to take good care also of our habitat, our home, and our ecosystem in particular. Homeostasis in the ecosystem. Homeostasis refers to the optimum balance in any system, be it biological or environmental in nature. So we talked about food web earlier. So when we maintain the food web, the interconnection between one organism to another through the food web, we can now maintain the balance in our ecosystem. And removing one of this particular key element or key organism, it will cause imbalance. So taking into account balance in environment simply considers the different aspects of this ecosystem, which comprise of the biotic and abiotic components in it. So just a review, the what biotic these are the living factors and abiotic are the non-living components of our ecosystem. The abiotic factors in ecosystem maintain the requirements of the biotic components in it for sustenance and also healthy interactions. Likewise, biotic components, as they do their activities, must not disrupt the natural patterns of abiotic parts for balance of environment. So humans and other living entities in the ecosystem must not engage in activities that incurred accumulated waste that will disrupt the prevailing biochemical cycles and other abiotic factors that will lead to an unbalanced state of ecosystem. So we should maintain the balance in our ecosystem. But what is happening right now, due to overpopulation of mankind, there are different ways and at the same time pollution that we cause, not only to the air, but also to the water and even in land. So we kept on polluting our environment, and at the expense of that, we are also causing imbalance or problem in our ecological or biosphere at the general. So always remember that the major problems in the world are the result of the difference between how nature works and the way people think. So if we only think about sustainable development and about sustainable ethic or environmental ethic, we must see to it that our thinking is that the environment has limited resources. So if we think that our earth has limited supply of resources, then we think we need to conserve it and we need to think futuristically that we're not only the only members of this particular planet. We're not only the only organism in this planet, that we need to share these resources to the future generation at the same time to our other plants and animals, maintaining the balance of nature. That's it for our discussion on interrelatedness of the natural world. I hope you learned something and see you our next discussion.